Welcome in, Nexties. You're not really called Nexties. For those of you who don't know, we're still looking for a name for the community here, but it's a running joke. For those of you who don't get it, we'll never actually name the community, probably. But today I'm calling you Nexties, just for fun, trying it out. Welcome in, Nexties. I'm Mark Halperin, editor-in-chief of the live interactive video platform Two Way, and your guide to everything that's next up. We have a jam-packed show today, which is what people in the video business always say, but this one is real. In a moment, my reported monologue on how Donald Trump makes decisions. It's one of the, I think, most misunderstood, underappreciated aspects of his leadership, of his presidency. And I'll walk you through my reporting on how Donald Trump deals with the big choices he faces as commander-in-chief, as president of the United States, as a politician. That in a moment. And then two great guests, Eric Bolling of Bolling, longtime host and journalist, will join us, along with Batya, Ungar-Sargon, my Two Way colleague, the author, journalist, and co-host of the group chat on Two Way. And then a little later in the program, one of my favorite phrases for the media business, a little later in the program, Michael Knowles, the host of the Michael Knowles Show on the Daily Wire, will be here. We'll talk to Michael about all manner of things. You'll be stunned, shocked, delighted, and amazed at how much we have in common. All right, but first, my reported monologue on choices, decisions. Every president has as their main job making tough decisions, because the easy ones get made by the staff. You'll talk to anyone who's been president of the United States, any chief of staff at the White House, and they'll tell you the biggest thing is every decision that gets the Oval Office inbox is a tough one, because if not, it would have been made by someone else. George Bush famously called himself the decider. He wrote a whole book about this. It was called Decision Points, because his view was the most interesting way, the most important way to look at the presidency is to say, what did a president do? What did he do in his book when he faced the tough decisions? Now, of course, there are commonalities about how these presidents do make their decisions. They have a chief of staff and a cabinet and the situation room, and they get polling briefings. There's some overlaps, but I've studied them all, every president I've covered. And I've always thought about it this way, whether they're running for president or as president, what is distinctive? What's different about how they make decisions that separates them from the other ones? And some of them, are famous for having made bad decisions. You take Joe Biden and the question of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, widely seen as a bad decision. And I think if you want to study presidencies, or you want to think about people running for president, think about what kind of decision makers are there? What kind of process do they use to make decisions? And in the case of Afghanistan, I think we've never had a really good accounting, despite some investigations by Congress and by the Biden administration itself, is what went into that bad decision. So to report and think about and explain any president's decision-making process, I think, is a way to understand their mind and evaluate what kind of president they would be if they're a presidential candidate, and what kind of president they've been, right? Are they good decision makers? And if you do that for Donald Trump, what you're basically saying is, how does Trump's mind work? Hillary Clinton famously said about her husband, the former President Clinton, that when he dies, people should study his mind. I think the same thing's true about Donald Trump. His mind is unique. The way he makes decisions is unique. And I've been reporting this out since I met him over a decade ago, two decades ago, really, and or a decade and a half, to be exact. And whenever I'm evaluating him, when he ran for president, the first time, second time, third time, and as president, I'm always talking to people about how is that decision made? What went into it? And some of it you can observe. Now, my premise is that the way Trump makes decisions is distinctive, and I'll walk you through why I think that. But it's also pretty effective. Now, I'm not here to endorse Trump or defend every decision he's ever made or he ever will make. He's made some bad ones, and he'll continue to. But I think he is underappreciated as a decision maker, better at it than his critics give him credit for being. And I think that even if you don't agree with his decisions, the way he makes them, the way he deals with them, is suggestive of a pretty compelling process. And again, I'm not endorsing him, but I'm telling you, he decides in a way that is quite effective. And of late, of course, he's been on a roll. His decision to have U.S. Bomb Iran, the way he decided to do one reconciliation bill rather than two, when many of his party wanted to do two, that was a big decision. The tariff strategy, much derided, but by the view of some people, and the view of some people, a very good decision. And we'll talk about that. All of those decisions and many more, all that he's done as president, a product of this distinctive decision-making process. Now, if you just on the face of it, you don't need to do a ton of reporting to know this. There are flaws in his decision-making process, and the chaos is often widely criticized, that there's too much chaos in how he does it. But it's also been discussed that the chaos is part of his process, particularly in dealing with foreign countries, where he's borrowed from Richard Nixon this notion of the madman theory, that if people think Trump is so unpredictable, so capable of switching on a dime and doing anything, that it puts them off balance. So even the chaos, which is, I'd say, the thing that his decision-making process gets described as the most and criticized the most, there's something to that. There's something that works about how Trump makes decisions. If he ends up being a hugely successful president, I think a big part of it's going to be, of course, that he uses this distinctive process to make decisions, and he makes them well. So here now, based on my reporting over many years and very intensely over the last couple of weeks, the 7 rules Donald Trump has for making decisions. First thing is, he knows who to ask. You know, if you got a national security issue, presidents are going to ask their Secretary of State, they're going to ask their Secretary of Defense, their national security advisor. And Trump does that. He'll talk to the usual people. Some of it's very linear, but some of it's not. Some of it is out of the box. He'll talk to someone in his office, a business leader who's in his office for a meeting on a totally unrelated topic. He'll say to that person, what do you think I should do about Iran? He's famous for asking people at his 2 clubs in New Jersey and Florida, what do you think I should do? 2 clubs in Florida and 1 in New Jersey. People say, well, that's kind of random. Why would he ask some random, waiter or gardener or business leader something where there's not a linear way that they're involved in the decision? And the answer is sometimes it's random, but sometimes Trump has high human intelligence. And he says, well, this business leader knows how to make decisions about business, so I'm going to ask them what they think about this unrelated decision. It's an extremely important trait. He's open-minded about who to ask, and he knows who to ask, even if they're not the person with line authority. Second thing about Trump in terms of making decisions, again, underappreciated, he's a massive student of history. He's also a huge sports fan, which I think a lot of people don't fully appreciate. Huge student of history, knows a lot about it, knew a lot about it before he was president. Since he became president, he's become even more invested in studying past presidents and how they've dealt with the job, including this issue of decision-making. Here he is from a cabinet meeting this week, give you some idea of just how into understanding his predecessors he is. Roll A2, please.
President Polk, he was sort of a real estate guy. He was, people don't realize he was a one-termer, but he was a very good president. And I'm not sure I should be doing this, he actually gave us the state of California. He was and then you have Dwight Eisenhower, who was a very underrated president, built the interstate system, and he was the toughest president, I guess, until we came along, but I don't mind giving up that crown, because I don't want to. He was not a Republican, to put it mildly, but he was, he was a 4-termer. He was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Over there is Honest Abe Lincoln. And the Lincoln bedroom's very famous. You remember when Bill Clinton had it and he rented it out to people. Okay. We don't do that. You have John Adams, and it's they were the first occupants of the White House, 1800. And
so the guy can go on and on about every president, and not just in kind of a funny or superficial way. He knows the lessons of the past presidents, and he's learned from them, and it informs his decision-making. The clearest example to me is the Forever Wars. He knows that Lyndon Johnson's presidency crashed on the shores of Vietnam. He knows what happened in Afghanistan with his predecessors. He knows what happened in Iraq with George W. Bush. And learning those lessons, understanding past errors made by his predecessors is a huge part of how he makes decisions as president. That requires knowing both what they did and the impact of what they did, and he does. Okay, number 3, Trump rule for decision-making. Make no decision before it's time. People will say, well, Mr. President, you have to decide this by X date, or you previously said you would make this decision by August 1st, so you have to make it by August 1st. Trump runs on his own clock when he's making a decision. When he's got a choice, he feels absolute freedom to reach whatever conclusion he wants to long after the conventional timekeeping would suggest he has to decide. It's an extremely valuable trait. Not everybody can get away with it. Trump can, but knowing that anybody tells him you got to decide this by X, either because of some external deadline or because he set a deadline previously in public or in private, he just doesn't care. He does not make a decision until he absolutely has to, and sometimes not even then. It's an extremely risky thing to do in some cases, but that is a big part of Trump's decision making that sets him apart from a lot of other leaders, a lot of other previous presidents. All right. Number 4, Trump matches the decision to the specific problem. Okay. He sometimes will be guided by very simple, simplistic, good versus bad, right versus wrong principles to make a choice. But sometimes he'll say, well, no, on this choice, it's really got to be kind of bloodless. I need data. I need to make a very strategic decision. It all depends on the nature of the facts on the ground for whatever the choice is, whatever decision he has to make, the nature of that decision. Some leaders will say, I'm just always going to say what's right, what's wrong, right? Some leaders are going to say, well, I'm just going to go on the data. I'm just going to be like Richard Nixon, Henry Kissinger, just a bloodless decision. In studying Trump, what I see is a guy who, again, matches each decision to whatever the specific is. Doesn't feel hemmed in by either the simple, a good versus bad, moral, amoral, or I got to decide based on data. It's all situational. Again, I think that's a very realistic and strong way to make decisions as president. Number 5, making the decision about what to do, it's only the first step. Trump focuses way more than most presidents do on execution and implementation of any decision he makes. He knows that the decision's important, but it's only the first thing you got to do. So I'll give you an example. As a candidate, Trump decided after the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, that he was going to go, right? And there was some question, should he go? Should he not? He wasn't president. Would he disrupt things there? All the normal things that go into that kind of choice. Trump decides to go. Now, most presidents or presidential candidates, having decided to take a trip like that, they tell the staff and expect the staff to go out and implement it, right? Like, where's he going to go? What are the photo ops going to be? How long will he be there? Trump considers that packed to the decision. It's wedded to the decision to go. So when he decides to go, Trump thinks of everything like it's a movie and he's the star of the movie. So Trump says, okay, we're going to go. Now, what are we going to do there? Right. So Trump decides to go to East Palestine, and the trip is widely considered historically now as a huge success. It helped him contrast himself with Joe Biden. It helped him contrast himself with the other Republicans who at the time were challenging him for the nomination. And that was somewhat about the decision to go. You didn't see Joe Biden go right away, and some controversy over that. It's part of why Trump went. We also didn't see other Republican presidential candidates go. So you make the decision to go. But as I said, for Trump, that's just the first step. Look at how effective he was in speaking. This is just one of many things, moments when he was on the ground in East Palestine. But look how effectively this is staged. Look at the folks behind him. Look at what he says. Here's Donald Trump in East Palestine.
To the people of East Palestine and to the nearby communities in Ohio and Pennsylvania, we have told you loud and clear, you are not forgotten. You are not forgotten. We stand with you, we pray for you, and we will stay with you in your fight to help answer and the accountability that you deserve. We'll have that accountability. It'll all be out there very clearly.
All right, I said Palestine. I meant Palestine. I think I said it right once and wrong once. All right, so that's a very well-staged set of remarks. But again, the whole trip was, walking around, being shown things by local officials, talking to voters on the ground. This is a photo op at a fast food place. Like, this is, for Donald Trump, part of the decision. He didn't decide to get arraigned in Georgia when he was indicted. He had to go do it. But he was heavily involved, right, in the decisions about, okay, what am I going to do? What kind of press access am I going to give? What am I going to do with the mugshot on social media? All those things. It's the same as president. When he says, okay, we're gonna change what we're doing on tariffs, or we're going to bomb Iran, that's the decision. And then the subsequent decisions are all part of how to do it. And again, with a high emphasis on implementation, high emphasis on executing, and of course, the public facing aspects, what he's doing with the media. Speaking of the media, number 6, Trump recognizes that if you make a decision and you just throw it out there, I'm gonna bomb Iran, or I'm gonna do one bill, not two, that the press then will take over. And of course, a lot of the press is very hostile to him. A lot of the press isn't going to want to frame the story he wants it to frame. So Trump's sixth rule of making decisions: don't let the media frame the decision. Trump wants to frame it himself. And he uses what is an unprecedented and masterful understanding of the media to give himself a kind of optionality on decision making that his predecessors rarely have enjoyed. And that goes from making the decision on himself, to all the incremental things that go from that, all the incremental choices that follow on. Trump doesn't want negative or harmful judgments, but he knows that the way to mitigate those about his courses of action is to be in charge of framing the thing. He does not have most politicians' typical defensiveness. He doesn't mind being accused of flip-flopping. No decision in his mind is final until he decides it's final. You see that with tariffs. You see that with Putin. He frames every step of the way. So how many decisions has Donald Trump made about what to do about tariffs? It's possible to count. Many, many, right? Many, many. And sometimes in a day, he'll put tariffs on, he'll take them off. How many decisions has he made about what to say about Putin? He's blown over the course of his time in national life more hot than cold on Putin. Now he's blowing particularly cold, but there have been other moments like that. Again, Trump's view is he doesn't let the media frame these decisions, particularly when it's a change. He frames it. It doesn't always win. Sometimes the media pushes back and frames it another way. But Trump's always thinking about, how do I frame the decision? Using social media, using press conferences, using other methods to frame the decision. Other presidents considered their job largely within the four walls of, I've made my decision. Go implement it. Go, have my press secretary talk about it. Go have cabinet members talk about it. Trump isn't like that. He decides both what to do and how to do it. And as I said, he doesn't mind changing his mind. And there's something about Trump in the context of this one, don't let the media frame the decision, that you can study it all you want, but it's not clear that other people can get away with it. Now, other politicians change their mind. Other politicians don't tell the truth. When they change their mind, they pretend they haven't. But there's something about Trump, and the only other politician I've covered who plays at this level is Bill Clinton. And you'll hear it all the time. You hear people say, well, how come Trump can get away with this and other people can't? Nobody can answer that question. It's just it's an ineffable, magical thing. And the people who oppose Bill Clinton felt the same people as Trump's adversaries do. It's unfair. But part of it is explainable. Part of it is explicable because Trump thinks about it. He says, again, like him or not, he understands the media and television production better than any president I've ever covered, probably better than anyone ever. And so he frames the decision and he challenges the media to frame it better, stronger, faster on their terms if they don't agree with him, either because they're hostile to him or because he is not telling the truth, or he has made a mistake and he's changing because he's made a mistake. Trump just is relentless about it. He's knowledgeable and he's relentless. And as long as he has an opportunity to change his mind and he thinks that's the better course, he will. Okay. Finally, number 7, follows his instincts. And this one, you could say, runs counter to all most of the other stuff I've listed here in the previous 6 ways Trump makes decisions, because the rest of them are largely about doing things with a method, sometimes with a madness, but always with a method. Following your instincts runs counter to that. It says basically, it doesn't matter who you consult, right? It doesn't matter if you know anything about history. It doesn't matter what the timing of the decision is. It doesn't matter what factors go into it in terms of data. It doesn't matter what implementations there are or what the media's role is. For Trump, what matters is his gut. And that is how he's made a lot of decisions. He does all these other things, but in the end, Trump believes following your instincts is key. Now, other presidents have felt that way at times, but have more doubt. Trump has doubt. And when you talk to people who are around him as he's making big decisions like with Iran, he's got doubt. Fear may be too strong a word. I would say he's quite concerned about making a fateful decision, like the Iran decision, bombing Iran. Iran might have launched a missile and hit U.S. Americans. Iran might have unleashed terror cells in the United States. There were a lot of risks involved in that decision. And Trump doesn't doesn't like risk, doesn't like errors. He certainly doesn't want to make a bad decision as president. He wants to make good decisions, but he believes in his instincts in the end. And I've said this before about Trump, and it fits in this context perfectly. He has extraordinary instincts about human beings, and he's very at peace when he makes a decision. Other presidents I've covered sometimes will agonize a little bit more. When Trump decides, in the end, takes in all the data, all the consultation, all the planning, but in the end, when he makes a final decision, and again, it's often at the very last minute or beyond what a normal president would say is the last minute, if his instincts tell him to do A and not B, he's largely at peace with that. And his focus it moves from self-doubt, oh my goodness, should I have done B? Maybe I should have done B. He moves off of that typically. And his focus is on, all right, implementation. We're doing A, let's get it done. And there's a good and bad about having all this decision-making so concentrated in one person, right? The bad of it is there may be people who know more than Trump. The bad of it is Trump can only do so much. Trump can't fly ahead of his trip and advance the thing himself, right? He has to rely on other people, and so much of it comes from him. The good of it is it's all integrated in one man. It's all integrated in a single brain of somebody who has extraordinary judgment, extraordinary instincts. Now that he's in his fifth year in the job, extraordinary experience about how to be a decider as president. And having it all concentrated in one guy allows there to be kind of a unified sense of how to get things done, a through line of what are the factors I'm going to use to decide? When am I going to decide? Now that I've decided, how are we going to implement it? How are we going to frame this for the public through the media and through social media? It's an extraordinary array. And I've thought, as I was doing reporting for this, how dissimilar is this from his predecessors, and the presidents I've covered, both Bushes, Clinton, Obama, Biden. How different is it? And my answer is it's pretty different. There are elements that match the others, but Trump is extremely aware from his time as a business person, the importance of making decisions when they're ripe, making them well, and following through. And you think about the big decisions he's made as president. Now, a lot of them, tens of millions of Americans agree with the actual decisions. They don't like what he decided. But if the standard you're judging him by in the first instance is, did Trump make a decision that he liked, and did it work out well from his point of view, not from the point of view of people who disagree with his politics? And then the question is, did it make America better? The verdict on the second one is not in yet, right? We're going to have to see, not just at the end of his 4 years, but probably in some cases years down the road. But does he get what he wants? Did he do at least some damage to Iran's nuclear capability? Did he pass a reconciliation bill that fulfilled a lot of his campaign promises? The answer is yes. And I will go back continually and look at every big decision he makes, and including ones he's made in the past. We don't really know yet what the results are, but all the ones going forward, and say, almost always they're reflective of these 7 principles that Trump uses to make decisions, and they serve him well from his point of view. 7 rules for making decisions that make Trump different than other presidents, and which, as I said, from his point of view, serves him well. He is a confident decision maker. The process itself can be chaotic. There are times when, in all of his consultations, he expresses some doubt. He's working it. And he's getting to the point where he feels comfortable making the decision. And as I said, Trump's timeline is different than everybody else's. So regularly people say, well, what's he going to do about X, or what's he going to do about Y? Tariffs, every day now for weeks. And the answer is he's going to do a lot of things. No decision is final, and Trump will make decisions serially until he gets to the point where he's happy with how it ends or the clock runs out. That's my view of how Trump makes decisions. Next up, we'll be joined by 2 Grady's, Batya, Ungar-Sargon, and Eric Bolling. We're going to talk about everything going on in Trump world and around the world. That is next up. Next up, is a little story about a guy named Leo Grillo. He was on a road trip and he came across a Doberman. This dog, severely underweight, clearly in a lot of trouble. So Leo rescued the Doberman and he named him Delta. Sadly, though, Delta was just one of many animals that needed help, which inspired Leo to start something called Delta Rescue. It's the world's largest no-kill care for life animal sanctuary. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, and horses over the years from the wilderness. and they provide their animals shelter, love, safety, and a good home. This dedication and everlasting love to animals, that is Leo's mission and Leo's legacy. Delta Rescue relies on contributions from people like all of us. That's where they get their money from. If you want caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak now to your estate planner because there are tax savings and estate planning benefits as well. You can grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and to speak with an advisor. We all call dogs man's best friends for a reason. You can help those now who need it most. So please visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. Again, please visit deltarescue.org. Next up, an explosive combination, or at least one I'm looking forward to. Batya Ungar-Sargon is my colleague at Two Way. She's an author, journalist, co-host of the group chat on Two Way, airs Thursdays at 4 p.m. And Eric Bolling, someone who is such a good broadcaster, I've stolen at least 2 techniques from him. I call it homage. He and his attorney call it stealing. He's the host of Bolling! And a longtime brilliant commentator, journalist, and host. Welcome you both in. Very happy to have you here. Next up, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I'm so interested in asking you both a bunch of stuff. Let's start with this, Batya. A constant search for understanding how much the country is paying attention to things versus Twitter and cable and YouTube. Is the country paying attention to Donald Trump on Ukraine, Jeffrey Epstein, and immigration? Or is that all, or are those 3 elite topics? And obviously you might have different answers on the 3, but are people paying attention on those 3 things? Or is that all just an inside game?
Okay, so this may be confirmation bias because these are the things I'm paying attention to. So take that with a grain of salt. I think the immigration question and whether Brooke Rollins is trying to give amnesty to millions of farm workers and hotel workers is extremely important. I think Jeffrey Epstein is very important to the influencers, but is not important to actual voters.
Okay.
And I think Russia is sort of, here's where I'm at with Russia. I think I'm kind of where the president is, which is it is becoming clear that I, like the president, was incredibly wrong about Putin. I assumed he would take the first off-ramp that was offered to him. And so he has made me and President Trump look like fools. So to the extent that I don't like being made to look like a fool, I'm following that very closely. But I don't think anybody holds it against the president for being willing to pivot in light of new information coming to light, rather than saying, look, I staked out this position that I'm going to end this war and I'm going to do it however it takes. And I'm going to, screw over one side if the other side is being recalcitrant. So I admire the president's willingness to pivot and to be nimble in his thinking about it. I think I'm kind of in the same place.
Eric, if you walked into a diner in Southern Illinois and raised these 3 issues, would you be met with strong opinions or blank stares?
I think strong opinion. Here's what's going on. By the way, thank you for having me, Mark. Great format. Batya, good to see you again, my friend. Your original question is I think the heart of what you're getting at right here is these 3 topics have kind of flipped MAGA on its ear a little bit, because I come from OG, as Steve Bannon will call me, original gangster MAGA. When Trump backtracked on, let's call it Russia, Ukraine, when he then said he was going to not deport farm workers and hospitality workers, MAGA kind of flipped out a little bit. And then the Epstein file, it just feels like this is a continued, it must be so salacious and so big, Mark, that it goes beyond both lines, that they didn't want to tick off a lot of wealthy people, a lot of high, powerful people, and also a lot of deep state people. So maybe they're all kind of sitting on it. But I do agree with you. There's an issue going on right now within MAGA. Like, what is MAGA? Can we redefine? Can we define what MAGA is? And it turns out what MAGA may end up being is whatever Trump wants it to be at the moment. And Batya, I will tell you, if you stick around long enough, Trump will, not Putin, but Trump will make all of us look like fools several times over.
Well, Eric, I got to disagree a little bit. I wouldn't say that MAGA is whatever Trump says it is. I would slightly modify that by saying Donald Trump has a genius for reading the room, for taking the temperature both of his base, but also of that sort of 10% of Americans who don't fit neatly into either side, who are sort of much more socially conservative, but much more economically liberal. He is so good at reading where the nation is at. So I would just say it's not that MAGA is whatever Trump says it is. It's that he really has a great
Batya,
sense.
okay,
Yeah.
so is deporting all illegals what Trump wants to do, or is it MAGA, or is it some of each? I mean, help me out here, because how do you say we're going to deport everyone who's here illegally? We're going to start with the criminals and then deport everyone, and then say, well, the actual hospitality and agricultural workers will be on a, a sensitivity basis, so to speak. So it's all, or it's not all. Which one is it, and which one's MAGA?
I'll tell you, Eric. Here's how you know what it is. Because Trump didn't sign an executive order about that. He tested the material at a rally.
Yeah, he flipped it out there. He focus grouped it.
He focus grouped it. He sent it out there into the era to see the vibes, to test the vibes, to see the reaction. The reaction has been extremely powerfully against that proposal, and I imagine he's going to take the reins from Brooke Rollins pretty soon on this. He's not going to give in because it test grouped really poorly.
Tuesday, they delivered the agriculture, this big event. It was Pete Hegseth was there, Defense was there, Justice was there, Pam Bondi was there, Kristi Noem was there, Homeland Security, and it was Brooke Rollins' ag USDA that put it out there, and she on that podium said, "We will be doing it, not mass deportations of farmers, but it'll be on us."
All right, let's stick with the deportation question. Right, this is a public policy question of some significance for the economy, for people who think people shouldn't be in this country illegally. Right, there's big questions about everybody. I think now, maybe not everybody, but most everybody would say, whether they're MAGA or not, people who came here illegally and have committed crimes should go. Right, and that we have the bandwidth to do that, and that won't destroy the economy. Then there's the question of people who are here illegally, who are big contributors to the economy, big contributors, right? People in hospitality and ag say, we can't do our jobs. And that's not just about their businesses, it's about America, if we can't have access to these workers. And then there's the question of, okay, let's say they're right. What do we do? Is there a way to find a way for them to still have access to those workers?
Well, you're assuming they're right, Mark.
I'm saying no, I'm not assuming they're right. I'm saying
let's say they're right.
Well, just as a hypothetical.
As a purist, deport MAGA.
Yeah.
Or you're here illegally, you go home, you come back in the right way, or just go home. And guess what will happen? Yes, you'll have to pay an American farm worker or someone who's cleaning hospital or hotel rooms more money because they're American and they're not coming over and illegally.
I totally agree. But
so
totally
inflation goes up, prices go up.
Understood. And just to be clear, when I said assume they're right, I didn't mean I'm saying they're right. I'm saying that's part of the decision tree that the president's thinking about, because the president's hearing from a lot of his friends who's saying that is the right position, right?
So and it is, except when you do that, prices go up, and he is very focused on lowering inflation, lowering the price of food and energy. So he's caught himself. He's painted himself into a corner.
He has, and clearly, if we keep making that exception, if we keep saying, well, people who get here illegally, who decide they're going to be in jobs that the president's friends say are necessary, get to stay, that's not a great system. But so here's my question, Batya first. I want to get to the bottom of where the American people are on this. And we can't do it based on the election, because the president didn't run on letting hospitality and ag workers stay here, right? That's a new thing he's dangling out there. So if I gave you $10 million and I cloned you both, how would you try to figure out where the American people were on this issue? Because I don't think polling does it, because it's too complicated to poll. People will say, you can't come here illegally, but I don't want to not be able to go to my favorite hotel. So how can we figure out not just what the right position is, but where the American people are? Is there a way to do that?
Can I answer a different question?
Sure. That's the rules of this program that was in your contract. So sure, answer whatever you want, but at least be in the ballpark.
I'm not an expert on polling. I mean, I imagine you would have to ask complicated questions like if prices would go up by this much, would you support it? If they would go by that much.
I'm saying don't do it on polling. Like, who would you want to talk to? Would you want to talk to the owners? Would you want to talk to the workers? How would you determine whether Eric's right that other people would take these jobs?
I hear from people all the time who are doing these jobs. Do you know the percentage of illegal migrants who represent agricultural workers. From the way both left and right talk about it, you would think it was somewhere around 95%
Of illegal.
of illegal
Yeah.
migrants
Yeah.
who work in agriculture. Do you
Yeah.
want to guess what the actual number is?
40.
I guess 25.
It's 28%,
Yeah.
which means that 72% of agricultural workers are American citizens.
Yeah.
It is disgusting to talk about hardworking people like their jobs are beneath them. And we're seeing now already that since President Trump took office, 2 million more Americans are in the workforce and 500,000 fewer illegals. It turns out they were taking jobs from Americans. It turns out they were driving down the wages. So this whole narrative that these people don't have workers is nonsense. There's a shortage not of labor, there's a shortage of cheap labor. Now,
Well,
the question of inflation in terms of food is a really important one. Let's separate out agriculture from hotels, okay? Because, like, give me a break. You know, it's around this similar to 28% of, you know, people who clean hotels are illegals. So I'm sorry, but those hotels that are employing illegals, they will just have to pay Americans a little bit more money to attract them to fill up that, you know, 28% or what have you. Those people work really hard and deserve good wages. When it comes to agriculture, all of the small farms, all of the medium-sized farms, all of the farms that are owned by families, they all employ legal American workers. It's the massive multi-billion-dollar corporations that are demanding a slave caste in order to do those jobs. And I think caving to them, to those people, you might as well be a Democrat.
Eric, it's the OG MAGA. I get your principled position on who should be deported. But where do you think the country is? Do you think the country agrees with you?
No. I think it's a moment in time. I think MAGA and America First populist movement is very, very strong and may last for a long moment, so to speak. But that's where we are right now. I think the country is probably far more, let's call it libertarian. Mark, at Fox, I once put out an idea, and it got a lot of steam on Capitol Hill. The 12 or 15 or 20 million illegals who are here already, we should offer them not a pathway to citizenship, but an asylum where they can stay. They're not going to become citizens unless
sort of legal status.
Some sort of legal status. We're not going to get deported, but they can continue to work in these jobs. And you could easily implement this at the driver's bureaus in every single state. You're illegal. You want to turn yourself in. Here, I'm legal. Here's my paperwork. I know I'm not going to become a citizen and vote right away, but I'm going to pay taxes, and I don't have to worry about being deported anymore. I think that's where most Americans are.
Eric, I'm sorry. You are so wrong about that. There have been 5 polls in the last 6 months asking Americans, should every single illegal alien be deported? And the numbers of support on these 5 polls ranged from 55% to 64%.
But Batya, this is what the president would call bullshit. Because they would say, should the law, basically, do you think the law should be adhered to? They'd agree. But then if you'd say, the lady who sews your buttons on, do you want her deported? She's here illegally. They'd say, well, no, she's valuable.
Mark,
that's why I think
the percentage of people employing those people is the percentage of people who are employing illegal migrants are accounted for in the 35% who oppose it. That's the elites. You think that regular people working class jobs in the heartland are employing illegal aliens?
But added on to that, if you
they
add
might
on
be
to that,
taking care of their kids.
If you add on to that question, do you want anyone who's illegal, period? You're here illegally, you want them deported. And the backside of that, with the understanding that your food prices will go up anywhere between, 5 to 7%. So your eggs, your 250 eggs this week, maybe $2.80 or $3, you might get a different polling number.
Exactly.
And by the way, is how you frame the question, who delivers the polling, as Mark will obviously tell you. The question is how to the letter of the law do you want to be, and are you willing to risk the greater economy, maybe even inflation, et cetera, for
right.
that
Yep.
attitude.
Let me say two things, and then we're going to move to a different topic. First, Batya, I wasn't saying what you were saying was bullshit. I was making I was making a
Mark,
joke.
you can say what I'm saying is bullshit. I don't mind.
I wasn't. I was saying I was making a joke about the president used it twice this week. But I just feel that way about the polling on this issue, as I said, because I think people have split views. They don't want the law broken. Eric, and second on this is, Eric, the thing you said about legal status, as you know, there are people who consider themselves super OG MAGA who think that's amnesty. But that is, I think, that's where most politicians are, except for the ones who feel heat from the left and the right. And I think that's where the country would be if there was a big national discussion.
I don't think so. You guys, I hear from people all the time who agree with the polls. And by the way, you're saying the polls don't mean anything. Well, the number has gone up from 38% in 2016 to 55% today. Does it not mean anything that the polling is changing?
It does. Because it's been in the news. If you walk everybody through the realities of deporting the second 10 million, the realities that will impact them for the second 10 million, I don't believe people would say they should be deported.
I just want to say one more thing about this. We can move on. I was talking to a truck driver a couple months ago about tariffs, and I think he encapsulated a feeling that I hear a lot from normies, like regular people who are not following anything too closely. What he said to me was, so you're telling me that if I pay a little bit more money now for certain goods or services, my kid will have a better shot at the American dream. And you think I'm going to turn that down? I am a working class man. My whole life is about sacrificing for my child.
Yeah.
That is the point of it. Like, I think you guys are totally wrong about this. And I think all the politicians, you're right, except for Trump, are totally in the amnesty camp. And they're completely divorced from where 60% of Americans are at.
All right. You and I in August are going to go to Southern Illinois and talk to real people, see what they say. All right. We're going to set this next topic up with some short answers, like one or two yes/no answers to my questions, just so the audience can understand where you're coming from. Batya first, did Joe Biden suffer acuity decline during his 4 years in office?
Yeah.
Eric?
Extreme.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Batya, did people around Joe Biden work to try to minimize the public's awareness of his acuity decline? Yes or no? Eric?
100%. Yes.
Okay. Was one of the people naturally, inescapably involved with that, the guy who was the president's doctor at the White House all 4 years? Would he have had to have been involved in those efforts on some level?
Yeah.
Eric? Yes. Okay. Was the information released by the Biden White House about the president's physical and his general health, on the face of it, incomplete?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. We all agree. So this week, the president's doctor, Joe Biden's doctor, is subpoenaed to come before a committee in Capitol Hill led by the Republicans. And he says, I'm not going to answer your questions because of the Fifth Amendment, right to not self-incriminate, and because of doctor-patient confidentiality. This story is barely covered by the media. Now, I know part of the reason why some of the media won't cover it, but even the conservative media. This to me was a massive moment in a serious reckoning that might take place, not to embarrass Joe Biden, not to violate his privacy as a patient, but to make sure that the country never again, the media and the politicians, never again sit back and allow the country to be put at risk by someone in the job suffering an acuity decline. Eric, what am I missing? Why is there not, in the wake of the guy taking the fifth, why is there not a massive national uproar over this?
Well, because the vast majority of the national media leans left or center left. And I'll give you a great example. Jake Tapper, 4 years, excoriated Lara Trump, defended Joe Biden's mental acuity. Even Joe Scarborough did the same thing. And in hindsight, these people, Tapper's going to write a book saying that we screwed up. Well, you were the prime reason the left-wing media lied to the American people to hide Joe Biden's demise. So they clearly, the left-wing media, there's nothing in their narrative that they want to show that Joe Biden, they were wrong. They lied for 4 years. They were covering up. So they have an interest in not tell the story. On the right, I think we do tell the story, and we do it the best we can. Here's the issue, though. You can't change it. There's nothing you can do about the HIPAA law that allows a doctor to not expose the ailments of his patient. And we all know politicians lie. They lie up and down, left and right, down the middle. Everyone lies. They all lie. Their mouth is moving, they're lying. And then their handlers are lying. And yes, they did cover up But guess what? I'm pretty sure Donald Trump isn't like 6'3", 204 pounds. But that's what they kind of say after those health exams.
He needs the Bolling diet.
I don't know. It's pretty severe.
Batya, I'm confused because Eric's right that the press was complicit. And shamelessly, people are now saying, oh my God, look at this cover up that we sat silently when it was all happening on C-SPAN. But the press now seems bought into the notion that there was a cover up. Here's the doctor who, just to give one example, either he gave the guy a cancer screening and lied about the results and lied about whether they did it, or he should lose his medical license for not giving the president of the United States a cancer screening. Like, this seems pretty basic. And the press seems now to, because of these books, and so what some Democratic politicians have said, the press now seems open to the story that there was an attempt to cover it up. So why isn't there an aggressive reporting to say, how can this doctor refuse to tell the truth even now?
It's a really good question. I don't have the answer. I do have a question for you guys, which is, he took the fifth, which suggests he thinks he may have committed a crime. What was the crime that he would have committed?
I can't even invent one. Now, they say, that the President Trump has ordered there to be an investigation. So maybe out of an abundance of caution, but I don't know what law could have been broken. Eric, do you have any idea what law could have been broken?
No, he uses the Fifth Amendment to not test it. It's also, if you perceive, if the individual, the subject, the citizen, constitutional right, you have the constitutional right not to answer if you perceive there could be a threat against yourself because of what you testified. And all he did was he just put the shield up that he knew you could hide behind as far as not testifying. Guess what? No one's going to be able to get what actually happened behind closed doors or his test results unless the doctor decides to break the HIPAA rule, at which point he would lose his medical license anyway.
You think we'll ever hear from this guy? There's some dispute about whether HIPAA applies in this case in every question.
Why? How could it not? How could it not?
Because he's under congressional subpoena.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Like, to me, this should be treated like refusing the subpoena because there's no crime he's being accused of. So by what right does he invoke the Fifth Amendment? There's no self-incrimination here. So that, to me, this should read like a refusal. I don't know why he's being allowed to skate on this.
All right. Let me ask you about one more topic, which is the topic of my reported monologue from earlier in the program about Donald Trump's decision making. Where would you rank Donald Trump as a decision maker compared to his six predecessors, the two Bushes, Clinton, Obama, Biden? How would you rank him as a quality decision maker, Batya?
Incredible. I've never seen somebody operating at this level, I would say.
Give me an example or two of a decision and a process that you think demonstrates that.
Somebody once told me something that I think was attributed to Jeff Bezos, that he has this view that it's better to make the wrong decision quickly than to agonize and lose a lot of time over trying to make the right decision. Because if you're willing to self-correct, you're going to be much more efficient that way, get a lot more done, and you're going to be correcting based on actual information rather than your perception of what might happen or what might go wrong. And I think we're really seeing that. It's both his willingness and his confidence to take big decisions that reflect exactly what he thinks was the mandate given to him by the American people, but also, as we've seen both with foreign policy and with the tariffs, to be nimble in his thinking, to self-correct, to ignore the taunting of the tacos or what have you, and say, look, new information has come to light. This is now how I'm going to proceed, whether it's Iran, whether it's Ukraine and Russia, whether it's the tariffs. Gently massaging the policy so that it's still in line with what the American people asked for, but more reactive and responsive to new information. It's just complete and utter brilliance like that we're seeing. I've never seen somebody operate at this level.
Brilliantly stated. No decisions ever final for Donald Trump. Eric, how would you rate Trump as a decision maker?
So, Mark, in 2015, end of 2015 into 2016, I was at Fox and I was likely the only human being who thought he should win and was going to win. And my point was, he's a businessman. We've had politicians forever, people who say they care about the economy. They don't know. They wouldn't even know they couldn't even define inflation if they had to. I wanted to see what a businessman in office would do. And he's proven himself in 4 years in the first term, especially in the 5 months in this term, that he understands things, he sees things that we don't even see. I'll give you two good examples of decisions he made that I thought were terrible ideas are turning out to be smart ideas. Number one, the tariffs. I hate tariffs. I'm a free marketeer. I think the world will adjust prices based on supply, demand, and other government influences. That's why I like less government influence. I hated the tariffs. So far, I'm wrong. So I caveat that with so far. I don't think we know the exact extent of the damage of the tariffs yet, but we may. And so far I'm wrong, but he saw something I didn't see, and I've been doing it for a long time. The other one was bombing Iran. Like, I felt the smart thing to do was support Israel in any way, shape, or effectively money, assets, intel, support Israel, let them take care of Iran. He did it. I thought that would open it up to a greater potential conflict. I was wrong. It was surgical. It looks like it's come and gone, and it's done with two great decisions. As far as opposed to Obama or certainly Biden, even the Bushes, I think Trump, I think I was prescient to say that the guy who runs the country the way he would run a business was the best thing for the country. And maybe going forward, you may never see another politician in that spot. You might see business people with personalities, by the way, with electric personalities as potential presidents going forward.
Yeah, but maybe not the same caliber of decision makers. We shall see. Eric, where and when can people see Bolling?
Oh, you can see it every day on RAV, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. And then we take that and Fox Corporation picks it up and distributes it across Rumble, YouTube, Tubi, Pluto, everywhere else. So we're everywhere, but it's Bolling. Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. Batya, where can we see your program and your content?
You can tune in and see me at the group chat at Two-Way, the most exciting new platform in which not only does our show have the full spectrum of opinion relevant to American life, but we also take calls from you, the viewers. So join us at group chat.
Awesome. Grateful to you both for being on. I hope you'll come back. And I consider you to be now the Batman and Robin of political commentary. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Batya. Thanks,
for
Mark.
being here.
Great to see you, Eric. God bless, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, Beyonce's brother, Michael Knowles, will be here, and we'll talk about everything. That's next up. Sadly, for too many, the American dream has changed. You can forget the white picket fence. For most Americans, the real drama now is getting out of debt. If you're feeling the pressure from rising prices, mounting credit card debt, and just trying to stay afloat every day, I want you to know one thing. There is a way out. Done with debt. They've got just one goal: to break you free from debt permanently. They're not pushing loans or bankruptcy on you. Instead, their tough negotiators go straight to your creditors, slashing what you owe, wiping out interest, and eliminating penalties. And they do not stop until your debt is gone. The very best part of all this is most clients of theirs see more money in their pocket the very first month. You've worked too hard to let debt steal your future. With Done with Debt, your dream of being debt-free is actually a reality. Visit donewithdebt.com, talk with one of their experts. It is completely free to consult. Some of their solutions are time sensitive though, so you don't want to wait. Right now, go to donewithdebt.com. Again, that's donewithdebt.com. Well, next up is a haunting historical confluence. When I was a boy, there was this thing with Lincoln and Kennedy and their assassinations and all the spooky overlaps between the circumstances of their deaths and their lives. Today, it reminds me of that. Our guest today is a graduate of an Ivy League school. He's a father of a son. He is wearing almost identical clothes I'm wearing, and he hosts a podcast with his name in it. Our biggest difference is I think cigars are foul, and he makes money off of them. Joining us now, next up, Michael Knowles, host of The Michael Knowles Show. Not, as I said in the tease to the segment, Beyonce's brother. But nonetheless, glad to have you.
Distant cousin, really. Thank you for having me. Good to be here. I'm sorry, I have to, if we weren't separated by the system of pneumatic tubes called the internet, I could hand you one of my Mayflower cigars and convince you otherwise, but it might be a lost cause.
I would try to sell it if there's any value to me. I could spend the whole time talking to you about smoking. I understand smoking as much as I understand the appeal of a man in uniform. What do you get out of filling your lungs with carcinogenics?
Well, no, you don't fill the lungs with cigars. It's all in the mouth and the chest. And there, a pithy way to put it was put forward by the theologian, Mr. Foley, Mike Foley, who said that the three types of smoke correspond to the tripartite soul. The pipe is for the logical part. It's the philosopher. The cigarettes, they're the appetitive part. It's for, it's an addiction. But the cigars, it's the thumotic element, the spirited element of the soul. It will make you into Winston Churchill. And if that doesn't sell you on the cigars, I got nothing else.
Hot smoke in my chest. I still don't get, but thank you for trying. Thank you for trying. I will say that in my career as a reporter, I don't golf, I don't hunt, I don't smoke cigars. It's amazing I have a single source.
It's shocking. Yeah. I know. What do you do? Iced teas?
No, I take them to really good restaurants. That's been the one thing I have, because I do love to eat, as is apparent if you're watching the show rather than listening to it. Tell folks about the Michael Knowles Show. How long has it been around? What good does it do?
It's been around forever. I realized this recently. In my mind, I'm still 19. But I realized, as you mentioned earlier, I have 3 young kids. I'm an old man now. I'm 35. And this show has been on the air for something like 8 years. The way it launched was I was around Daily Wire when this was just a small little blog. And then I published a blank book called Reasons to Vote for Democrats, a comprehensive guide. Hit #1 on the national Amazon chart. And then President Trump endorsed it. Then I got a book deal, another book deal to buy the rights to nothing. And then I got a show based on not having written a book. And
the book was just a bunch of blank pages.
Totally blank pages. I was then offered another book deal. And I said, you're using the word another quite liberally here, because I've done nothing.
This one with words.
This one with words, which was actually about words and was called Speechless, which happily also hit #1. You can get it wherever fine books are sold from the past 5 years. But it gave me the opportunity to have this show, which what I endeavor to do on the show is hit the news every day, 5 days a week, same old stuff that everyone's doing. But what I'm really interested in is philosophy and theology. I'm with Cardinal Manning, and I think all politics ultimately, all human conflict ultimately is theological. So to me, that's what really gets me going. And especially in this moment, really starting around the time my show started, you had this massive political shift where the American right really kind of reinvented itself, or reinvented itself, kind of went back to, I think, an older and more substantive form of conservatism. And so at that moment, you get to examine all of the first principles, all of these intellectual priors. And I think you've seen that play out over time. So a shift away from talking about procedural norms toward a talk about substantive goods, a shift away about what it even means to have a country. When I was a kid, I was told America's just an idea, free floating in outer space. Now we're really examining America as a substantive thing with geography and people and stuff and traditions. And so I think it's really mapped on to the Trump era. Now, where that leads, I don't know, either to a golden age or to World War III, I guess.
Yeah. So again, despite our spooky similarities, you're with Cardinal Manning. I'm with Archie Manning. You see high ideals in politics. I just see a lot of good jokes. But nonetheless, I'm going to go with you on the ideas thing. What's your view of you got a decent relationship with Vice President Vance, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, I'm a great admirer of the Vice President. He and I were at Yale at the same time, actually. We didn't really know each other, but he was at the law school when I was an undergrad. And I think we were probably 50% of the total conservatives that were on campus at that time. I'm not even sure he was conservative at the time.
Yeah, you might have been ordering clam pizza in the same place at one point without knowing it. I didn't really have much thought about him when he ran for Senate. I was familiar with his detractors and his fans, and I didn't really think all that much about him. And I thought he'd probably win the seat. And then I was struck on the eve of the Republican convention, somewhat overshadowed, of course, by the assassination attempt against the president, that so many really loyal Trump people would come up to me unbidden and say, Trump better not pick this guy, better not pick him. And then when he was picked, even though the president had just been shot, many of the same people, not charitable, and said, horrible idea, horrible pick. That morphs before too long, and certainly now, to I've never seen someone so popular within a party. I've never seen someone where everybody just loves him. They think he's great. And I am so impressed with some of the speeches he's given. I'm so impressed with the interviews he's done with another intellectual like you, Ross Douthat. I find the 2 interviews he's done with Ross to be phenomenally interesting and compelling. I found the speech he gave in Europe to our European allies to be one of the best speeches I've ever heard. And I think one of the most important, certainly by a vice president. So I want just your appraisal of, leaving aside 2028, where does he stand in the project of MAGA, the project of the Republican Party, the project of the conservative movement now?
Well, one, the man is very, very intelligent. And if you've ever not even spoken to him, if you've ever seen him give a speech, I think that is apparent.
Yeah.
His IQ is at least a standard deviation or two above the average in DC.
And the average Yale graduate.
And certainly about 4 above the average Yale graduate. And so he's very intelligent, and crucially, he knows what time it is. I think you're seeing this now, as we were discussing earlier. As the Republican Party has shifted, as the conservatism has shifted, as the national self-conception has shifted ahead of the bi-sesquicentennial next year, a lot of people seem to be getting left in the dust. There are a lot of politicians who they sound like a broken record from 15 years ago. They haven't kept up. It's clear to me that the vice president sees where things are moving, which is why I was elated when he was picked for the ticket. And he was criticized for opposite reasons. When you say not everyone was so happy around the convention, there were people who are stuck in more of the Bush era consensus who I think were upset at Vance because he doesn't agree with a lot of that. But there were also people who were hardcore Trump loyalists who didn't like that Vance was skeptical of Trump in 2016.
Well, more than skeptical, he said he was Hitler. I mean, it runs beyond skepticism. I know. Yeah, you're right. There were both those. Keep going, but that's an absolutely true point. And yes. I'm going to ask you to annotate because you're assuming too much knowledge on the point of my viewers and listeners. What does knows what time it is means? I know that's a common phrase in Nashville and in your circles, but explain to people what that means because it's really important. And I think it's exactly seminal in answering the question I'm asking, which is as I think might be true, Vance a singular voice in defining the future of conservatives, MAGA, and the Republican Party. What does that mean?
He's probably the most prominent, other than Trump himself. Trump is still he is the leader of the party, and he's also rather avant-garde in his own way.
He is. I want define the phrase, then pick up where you were, and I apologize for interrupting.
No, not at all. So the phrase "to know what time it is" just to be aware, to be a little woke to the changes that have gone on, to see where things are headed, to recognize some of the contradictions, some of the tensions, the ideological inconsistencies that we've had in recent politics, and to kind of see where the resolution of those are going.
And to not accept the status quo or the past as defining the future. That's how
certainly recognizing that what we have understood to be conservatism is no longer really tenable. And so politics is always, eternal principles on one hand, but constantly changing circumstances on the other. And so to know what time it is to recognize those changing circumstances and to be adept at applying eternal principles to those changing circumstances. I think Trump has done that in a magnificent way, and Vance very, very clearly is quite good at it. So, when he was picked, I was elated, and I think he's won over a lot of people, as you point out. I mean, the Trump loyalists recognize this guy is a loyal VP. He is not, as many people in the administration have been, especially in the first term. He's not undermining the agenda. He recognizes his role in things, but he's willing to advance. I think an urgent. Series of policy goals and objectives for the Republican Party. When he speaks about something like reordering our relationship to NATO in Munich, and does so in a way that's quite brazen and charitable, but pretty blunt, I think most people resonate with that.
Yeah.
When we talk about things like, I don't know, family policy, declining birth rates or something like that. These are urgent questions that have been completely neglected for almost my entire life in politics, despite America having a below replacement birth rate since 1971. So, these things, I think, the advantage of being smart and having been radicalized at a place like Yale, where you see all the liberal arguments and you can come to reject them in a good way. The upside of that is you can see where things are going. You can speak to that, and I think that speaks to the common sense, which is why he's now popular.
Yeah, the analog I've been thinking about lately is Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton in the 80s and into the 90s was part of something that Sidney Blumenthal, the New Republic writer, called The Conversation, where he was talking to other elected officials, to public policy people, to academics, to journalists, to all sorts of people about the future of the country. And Clinton put himself at the center of that. and very similar to Vance in terms of his upbringing and then an elite education, and then a capacity to understand the private sector, which not every elected official has. And I think about the other people who you would say part of the conversation. I'd say Ted Cruz, intellectually part of the conversation. I'd say Tom Cotton, Marco Rubio a little bit, maybe not as much for a variety of reasons. What those guys don't have, besides not being vice president, which is obviously a big thing, is they're not as happy a warrior as the vice president seems to be, right? And there's something about that that's super, super appealing to thinking about not just running for president, but being part of the conversation. To be part of the conversation, to be at the center of the conversation, first of all, you have to trust the media, which is, of course, often ill-advised. And second, you have to trust some of the media. But second, you have to be well-liked, because people don't want you to rise if they don't like you. And Ted Cruz for sure, and I say that I like both Ted Cruz and Tom Cotton, but it's just a reality. Ted Cruz for sure, and Tom Cotton to some extent, they have detractors. The vice president, I can't find any detractors in the party as part of the conservative conversation. And to me, that helps, besides his brain power, that helps keep him at the center of this thing.
Yeah, I think that's fair. You know, I'm a good friend of Senator Cruz of many years. Used to host a show with him for a few years. So I actually know for a fact he is quite a happy warrior, and he is a very likable guy. And he's fabulous.
I know it too. But as you know, there's that famous joke about him. You know that famous joke?
I'm not sure. I might know.
Why do people take such an instance as like to Ted Cruz in order to save time? I've known him since.
I was actually arguing with a buddy of mine who's very politically involved, and I remember he was making some comment like this about Senator Cruz years ago, and I said, so he said something like he doesn't have friends or something. I said, I'm a friend of his. What are you talking about? He's a great guy, but sure, he has.
I like him. I respect him. I think he's hilarious. I've played football with him. Not everyone can say that, but you know as well as I do, his college roommates trash him. Like, it's just like a lot of senators don't like him. So you and I can like him, but also accept the reality he's not where the vice president is in terms of how people in the party feel about him.
Yeah, I do think Vance has one of the vice president's advantages is he's a little newer to the scene, and he came up at this moment where the political coalition was shifting, so that can win him friends, and it can win Trump friends that other Republicans have difficulty winning over. You know, the fact that the Trump Vance ticket was able to pull these two Democrat presidential candidates, Bobby Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard. Yep. The fact that they were able to pull over the Maha Crunchies, which when I was a kid, they were always firmly on the left, the vaccine skeptics, these groups come over to him, even parts of Silicon Valley, which obviously the vice president has some connections to. Because of that, I think it just disrupted what had been a relatively ossified system of coalitions. And that breeds a lot of opportunity.
Yep,
and the
100%.
fact that Vance can do it, having won over liberal Hollywood, having had Hillbilly Elegy come out. Yeah. That was the toast of New York and LA.
100%.
They made a movie out of it. I mean, he won that over. And then he said, hey, by the way, guys, I'm going to follow my ideas to their logical conclusion. Yep. You might not like where that leads, but it does mean that he's been able to play in a popular way with just about everyone.
I agree. And as you said, and put a button on this, and I want to ask you some other stuff. As you said, it's kind of incredible because last year, as you point out, he had enemies both on the MAGA side and on the establishment side. So to go from being shot at in both sides to having both sides lay garlands and flowers and candies down at his feet, kind of an incredible feat, to use the other form of feat. And I don't really totally understand how it happened. Happened so fast.
I'll tell you how it happened. I'll tell you exactly how it happened. Yeah. It's not just that he's the cleverest, most Metternickian figure.
Right.
The way it happened is the guy's got the goods. That's how it happened.
Well, but he had the goods a year ago too. He's the same guy. Now he's vice president, so some of it is people sucking up, but it's more than that. It's an incredibly unexplored thing. And if he gets elected president, and I think today's the front runner, it'd be an incredible story to explain how that happened, which I plan to be the one to tell. All right, I'm going to name a successful person, and you tell me in one sentence with no semicolons or colons why they're successful. What's the essence of their reason for success? Ready? Here we go. Joe Rogan.
Everyman.
Okay, did it in one word. Excellent.
I did it in one word. He's the median voter.
Yeah, everyman.
It's authentic, and so he can. People are on a journey of exploration with him that is not he's not below them. He's not above them. He's not condescending. He's just perfect at it.
Okay. Beyonce.
My cousin. That's why she's popular. I think that's where she gets all of her.
Why is she successful?
I think she's successful because, look, she's good looking and she has a good voice. And she also came up at a time that was 2000s or so. The fact that she's a black woman, I think, helped. It's very racially conscious kind of time. I think that she's fashionably liberal. She's not extremely woke liberal. She's just fashionably liberal. When she was coming up, that was a de rigueur. And so she was just perfect for her time. And also, she's obviously in the Illuminati.
Taylor Swift.
You got me scratching my head a little bit on that one. Other than, okay, I've got an answer for it.
Dude, she's an incredible lyricist. You can just say that.
I was gonna. Okay.
Are you not a Swift? Are you not a Swiftie at all for your national neighbor?
Listen, de gustibus non disputandum est.
No, my father's version of that is some people even like chocolate ice cream. Okay.
I'll tell you why though. I'll tell you why. Because she's temperamentally conservative. That's why people like Taylor Swift. That's why she's popular.
But I don't care if you don't like her music, dude. She's a brilliant lyricist. You have to just.
Is
focus.
she? Are you being? I can't tell if you're being facetious right now.
100%. She's brilliant.
Stop it.
She's a brilliant lyricist.
Really? Maybe I need to listen more.
Don't forget "Shake It Off." That's just a pop ditty. Her other songs, brilliant lyrics. Okay. Next would be Elon Musk.
Well, affirmative action because he's an African American, of course. It's the only explanation.
Yeah.
He's the really confounding.
I keep saying, dude, he's one of the smartest people on the planet. That's the answer.
That's it. That's all. But there's plenty of smart people.
He's got brilliance and drive and vision.
You know what? Yes. Don't you think that if you look, he's extremely intelligent. He's driven like a maniac. He's all these things.
Yeah.
Don't you think growing up in South Africa with an imposing father, don't you think that played a role too? This guy just fights off every attack.
Yeah. But that's part of his reason for his determination, probably. All right, Anthony Volpe, Yankee shortstop. Anthony Volpe. I asked because he's my neighbor. That's why I chose him.
Volpe is your neighbor?
He is. Lives in my building.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yo,
there was a young. I live in a building with a bunch of old people, and you're a big Yankee fan. This is why I'm bringing it up. Yeah. And I bring down the median age of our building by a lot. And there was some nice young man we would see on the elevator moved in. It's like, how's this kid affording living in this building where a bunch of old people, not just afford, it's not that expensive a building, but it's like the apartments don't turn over very often. It's like, who's this new young kid?
I won't say like I'll bring over cigars or whatever and I'll make you smoke cigarettes, but you have to let me come hang out so that I can just maybe possibly run into Volpe in the hallway. Part of the reason I think Volpe is successful, other than he's a great athlete, is he's got a little bit of that Jeter thing where he's just kind of like a clean cut kid and he seems young and he's just, he's like very wholesome. There's some like really kind of more grizzled baseball players, but he's not that. He's like, he looks like he just got out of Little League,
Totally agree. And also he's got, he grew up in the New York area. He's got like a tactitional focus on the nuts and bolts of the game.
Yes. Also, I could be confusing him with another Yankee. Isn't there a picture of him at like age 9 at the World Series or something, or at a Yankee game?
Could be. I don't know.
Something like that. Yeah. Like meeting Jeter or something.
I don't know the answer to that. Ben Shapiro,
because he's got me by his side. I would say that's the main reason.
You're the Knowles behind the man.
Yes, I asked my wife once, 10 years ago, when Ben was really exploding.
Yeah.
I said, why is Ben?
Yeah.
He's got this, I've talked to him, he's got this voice that, look, he's obviously doing something right, but he's got this voice he's not exactly Dean Martin or something. Yeah. Why does it?
Yeah. And so what's the answer? What'd your wife say?
And he's a Jew in a Christian country, and he's, and she told, and it all kind of ties in.
Yeah.
She said, Michael, in an age of insanity, people just want a nerdy Jew to tell them facts. And I said, that is so accurate. And even I kind of joke about it, Jew in a Christian country, but even that distance kind of gives Ben the ability to look at things and have a really kind of even disinterested view of how things are going on for most political issues.
I'm talking to the control room. Please clip that one off for social media.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Steve Bannon.
He's just a complete political animal, right? Oddly enough, Steve Bannon is one of the few people in Republican politics, who I don't really know that well, but he's just a complete killer, right? I mean, he's just this. He's obviously extremely intelligent.
You remember I said no colons or semicolons.
Yes, yeah. No,
he's an animal. Just stop with animal. That's
he's an animal. He's an animal. That guy.
Charlie Kirk.
Charlie Kirk was bred in a petri dish for conservative Republican politics.
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk's education. Charlie's a good friend of mine. Charlie's education was going to right-wing events, think tank events, donor events, rally type events. And he later became something of an autodidact. He did the Lincoln Fellowship at the Claremont Institute. You know, he got a fair bit of book learning there. But from age 2 or whatever, when he was made in this petri dish in, you know, somewhere at the Heritage Foundation.
He got it all. He's got it all.
He got it all.
He got it all. He is the Michael Jordan of whatever it is he does. Okay. Jen Psaki.
Jen Psaki was pretty good. So she wasn't the greatest press secretary ever, but
she's pretty successful now. And I'm asking you why.
Yeah. I mean, she's on that network that gets like 3 viewers a day or something, but that's okay. Do you know why? She's the girl next door. I thought when, especially in her last job, even though you knew she was kind of lying to you and you could see her prevaricating all the time and constantly evading and circling back, it didn't matter.
That's what the girl next door does. She lies all the time. Hey, do you guys have any sugar left? We need some sugar. We're making a pie. No, we got no sugar. Nothing.
So we'll circle back to your
Nothing
sugar.
We'll circle back. When we go to the store, we'll get you some sugar. Those guys who do that podcast, what are they called? The Crooked whatever?
Oh, the Crooked guys.
Yeah. What's the secret of their success?
They're the liberal guys, the Pod Save.
Pod Save America. Yeah. What's the secret?
Oh, because they are just the archetypal millennial fashionable libs. So they're not, you know,
they're filling the demand side for that.
Yes.
There's some demand for that.
Yeah, no, there still is. I remember when I was in college and everyone loved Barack Obama. And it was all these kids who were 22 or whatever, 20, and they grew up watching The West Wing, that horrific show by Aaron Sorkin. And they just grew up with that, and then they needed something to fill the West Wing gap. And Barack Obama was the guy who filled the West Wing gap. And now Obama's done, and these guys are aging, and now we need the pod bros to fill in that gap. There's nothing avant-garde about it whatsoever, but it's a kind of a nostalgia, really.
All right, 2 more, then we got to go. Beethoven.
Well, he was deaf, which allowed him to tune out all the people who were trying to bother him all day. It's like when I try to write my show and all these people at the Daily Wire come in and bother me. He was deaf, so he got to just focus on composing.
All right. Lastly, you get a choice. I'll give you 2. You can pick whichever one you want. The Beatles or AOC? Which one do you want to do?
Chocolate ice cream or medieval torture? The Beatles. I love the Beatles.
Why are they successful?
So they are technically perfect at everything they did at a reasonably high level, but not so high that it eluded the mainstream. It's kind of like like Rolex.
I think that's the perfect explanation of why AOC is successful as well. Where can you'll play it back? You'll see. That's good. Where can people access and how can people access the Michael Knowles show?
They can go to Daily Wire, of course. It's where the show is. It's also on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I think AOL Instant Messenger, MySpace, LiveJournal, and Zanga. They can find me on Twitter at Michael J. Knowles. They can find links to all my stuff at michaeljknowles.com. And most importantly, they can go check out Mayflower Cigars.
Yeah. We can buy all the cigars you want there. Although the prices will give you sticker shock, I have to be honest.
Because you don't know.
Exactly. I meant the reverse sticker shock. What does the J stand for?
The J stands for John.
John, with an H.
With an H, not with a
and
a space.
And your one bit of advice for how to be a good dad would be what?
Show up. Which I have to tell myself all the time because when I want to stay late, I want to go on that trip. I want to go do where it's mostly work is what takes me away from it. But I go away on a 2-day trip and I come back and my kids look different because when they're little, they change all the time. Yeah. And I make that 1 hour a night or 2 hours a night, wrestle them around, throw them in the shower, whatever you got to do.
Whatever you got to do. I will say this last question is a rhetorical question. I wonder why I am regularly on Charlie Kirk's podcast, which I'm about to be after we finish up here, and I've never been on yours. With that,
wow.
I say, Mr. Knowles, couldn't have enjoyed it more. I'm hoping you'll come back like on a regular basis, and we can just update on JD Vance and Ted Cruz or whatever else we want to discuss.
And foosball. Who's winning at foosball?
And football. I'm very grateful to you for making time. Love having you on. And again, truly hope you'll come back on a regular basis.
Well, thank you, Mark. Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
All right. That was Michael Knowles. According to Google, he is not, I repeat, he is not Beyonce's cousin, but a great guest, and loved having him on and loved having you be here. This program, again, very similar to Michael Knowles' program. You can watch it almost anywhere and listen to it almost anywhere, but please like, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And next up is brought to you by lots of people, which you've heard from today. Check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/nextuphalperin. And I will see you next week with at least 2 more episodes. You never know. We'll just do as many as we feel we need to. Thank you for being part of Nexties. Have a good week.